Man is ultimately self-determining. Man does not simply exist, but always decides what his existence will be. Everyone has his own specific vocation in life to carry out a concrete assignment which demands fulfillment. Therein he cannot be replaced, nor can his life be repeated. Thus everyone's task is as unique as his specific opportunity to implement it. Viktor Frankl. Invented by Viktor Frankl, the term logotherapy comes from the Greek logos, meaning. According to Gnostics and ancient philosophers, logos is the divine reason implicit in the cosmos. According to Frankl, logos is deeper than logic and thus beyond rational comprehension, as we'll cover later. Logotherapy is recognized as the third Vienesse Psychotherapy School. It focuses on helping people find existential meaning, the strive for which it views as our main driving force. This is an essential characteristic distinguishing it from psychoanalysis and Adler's individual psychology. Logotherapy operates on the concept of will to meaning, whereas the two other on will to pleasure and will to power. Frankl doesn't identify himself as a psychoanalyst. He calls himself a psychotherapist of his own school, logotherapy, which he defines as existential analysis. And the central theme of existentialism is to live is to suffer, to survive is to find meaning in the suffering. If there's a purpose in life at all, there must be a purpose in suffering and death. A reason to live. Such a reason cannot be given externally. You must actually determine it for yourself, taking full responsibility, which we'll examine later. In psychoanalysis, you lie on a couch opening about things that may be uncomfortable and somewhat disturbing. In logotherapy, you may sit erect, actually hearing such things. A common approach Frankl utilized is asking why wouldn't you commit suicide? Answering it helps you extract one or multiple reasons, forming your actual life purpose and shifting your perspectives and essentially life. And as long as it's meaningful to you, this can be a thing or things to accomplish, a person to be with, experiences to have, art or work to create, etc. The future. Unlike psychoanalysis, logotherapy is far less retro and introspective. It actually focuses on the future, namely one's meaning and purpose to be fulfilled in it. It is a future-oriented and meaning-centered approach, although it actually ascribes a rather crucial role to the past, which we'll deal with by the end. Logotherapy, Frankl explains, makes us conflicted with and reoriented toward our life's purpose and meaning. This improves our ability to overcome negative feedback loops, neuroses, and whatever conditions we may have. So rather than reinforcing them, it actually defocuses, discharges, and eventually breaks down those. Will to meaning. Man's search for meaning is the primary motivation in his life and not a secondary rationalization of instinctual drives. This meaning is unique and specific in that it must be fulfilled by him and can be fulfilled by him alone. Only then does he achieve a significance that will satisfy his own will to meaning. Some authors contend that meanings and values are nothing but defense mechanisms, reaction formations, and sublimation. But as for myself, I would not be able to live merely for the sake of my defense mechanisms, nor would I be ready to die merely for the sake of my reaction formations. Man, however, is able to live and die for the sake of his ideals and values." Unquote. After multiple studies, Frankl found that about 80% of the people needed an ideal, meaning, or purpose to live for, and about 80% had one they would actually die for. Unmasking. Now, seldom does such a purpose stem from camouflaged inner conflicts. In such cases, some onion layer peeling, as they call it, might be helpful. On the contrary, these are exceptions, not the rule. When the person's authentic part is unveiled, the peeling must stop. Otherwise, the only unveiling is really the therapist's ulterior motive to demean one's authenticity and strive for meaning. Unmasking should stop as soon as one is confronted with what is authentic and genuine in man, man's desire for a life that is as meaningful as possible. If it doesn't stop, then the only thing that the unmasking psychologist really unmasks is his own hidden motive, namely his unconscious need to debase and depreciate what is genuine, what is genuinely human in man. Unquote. Crises and Frustration. Stressing the pleasure principle, psychoanalysis considers unconscious motives and sexual frustration as the root cause of neurosis. Existential analysis recognizes those as byproducts of failing to find meaning and responsibility. It calls that existential frustration regarding one of three things. 1. Human's actual motive being. 2. The meaning of existence. And 3. Striving to find tangible meaning in your life. Besides typical psychogenic ones, logotherapy treats so-called noogenic or no-logical neuroses. Also coming from Greek, the term nous means mind. Noogenic neuroses do not stem from quote-unquote unreconciled drives and instincts, usually of the past, but real existential problems of the present. Hence, their treatment isn't through psychotherapy, but by delving into your specific condition. Ikigai. Inspiring to say the least, some of Frankl's case studies are also included in the best-selling Ikigai by Francisco Miralles and Hector Garcia. One of them is with an American diplomat going through an existential crisis. For 5 years of psychoanalysis, he was mainly told to make peace with their father, as according to his therapist, his superiors were basically father images. A few interviews with Frankl made clear that the person simply needed a new occupation. Eventually, they switched professions, getting out of the crisis and being happy. According to Frankl, that person never required any therapy as they weren't really a patient. Let me know your thoughts. Conflicts. Not every conflict is necessarily neurotic. Some amount of conflict is normal and healthy. In a similar sense, suffering is not always a pathological phenomenon. Rather than being a symptom of neurosis, suffering may well be a human achievement, especially if the suffering grows out of existential frustration. Existential frustration is in itself neither pathological nor pathogenic. A man's concern, even his despair over the worthlessness of life, is an existential distress, but by no means a mental disease. It may well be that interpreting the first in terms of the latter motivates a doctor to bury his patient's existential despair under a heap of tranquilizing drugs. It is the task rather to pilot the patient through his existential crisis of growth and development. Unquote. Logotherapy enables us to increase awareness of the hidden logos within, yet it doesn't restrict that to unconscious drives and instincts. It actually includes existential realities and potential meanings to be fulfilled. Tension. The search for meaning often generates tension, which Frankl views as an indispensable prerequisite of mental health. Furthermore, it can be said that the latter actually fuels the former, and on many occasions, Frankl quotes Nietzsche saying, "He who has why to live can bear almost anyhow." One of those includes reflecting on rewriting the manuscript while in Auschwitz. The tension this created helped Frankl overcome his typhus fever and basically live to see the day of freedom. However, this wasn't unique to him. It was actually a common trait among camp survivors. They all anticipated something to accomplish in the future after their release. So it really wasn't inner equilibrium, but this same tension that proved crucial to their survival. The tension is between what you have already achieved and what you want to accomplish in the future. Presumably, it is pretty different from the equilibration and reconciliation stressed not just by psychoanalysis, but by various mystical schools. It actually implies struggle and dissatisfaction with your current situation and basically improving it. Now, in my humble opinion, esotericists should really question the typical emphasis on the middle pillar, which is basically the one of stasis, as opposed to those of function, which can definitely help with the tension. Also, those deeming Hesed and Gebura as dangerous or evil, while they're actually the primary forces for initiating change and overcoming the stemming from Saturn entropy and randomness of life. Let me know your thoughts. Quote, "I consider it a dangerous misconception of mental hygiene to assume that what man needs in the first place is equilibrium, or as it's called in biology, homeostasis, i.e. a tensionless state. What man actually needs is not a tensionless state, but a rather striving and struggling for a worthwhile goal, a freely chosen task. What he needs is meaning waiting to be fulfilled by him." Unquote. Called noodynamics, this is the existential dynamics of a field in which one pillar is you and the other your goals to achieve, meaning to fulfill, better life to live, etc. Such a perspective gives us purpose and direction, whereas lacking it makes us prone to entering existential vacuums. Existential vacuum. A classic example is the so-called Sunday neurosis. During the week, people are preoccupied with different tasks, keeping themselves busy and basically distracted. Such a busyness provides a sense of structure and security, yet when Sunday kicks in, their life's actual lack of substance becomes apparent, causing desperation. Another example of struggling with boredom is those preoccupying their minds with meaningless sex. Also, obsessing with making more money, even when that doesn't add any more value. Regarding the first, Frankl notes one's overall interest in sex drops when one starts living their true meaning or purpose. The second he calls the lowest form of Adlerian will to power. Let me know your thoughts. Success and happiness. Speaking of this, unlike standard self-help advice, logotherapy offers a somewhat counterintuitive approach toward happiness and success. Do not aim at success. The more you aim at it and make it a target, the more you are going to miss it. Success like happiness cannot be pursued. It must ensue, and it only does so as an unintended side effect of one's dedication to a cause greater than oneself. Happiness must happen, and the same holds for success. You have to let it happen by not caring about it. Unquote. The key is following your conscience and actually stop caring. If you really do, you will eventually enjoy long-term happiness and success, in the words of Frankl. Finding meaning. As covered, your life's meaning cannot be ascribed by a doctor or anyone else. It must be discovered by you and you alone, as it's unique to each. As Frankl says, what matters is not the meaning of life in general, but rather the specific meaning of one's life in a given moment. Like making the right move in a chess game, this meaning is highly peculiar to your journey's current stage. You can only identify it based on the situation, which eventually changes. Similarly, Delimbing and Ikigai scholars stress that the so-called pure will and Ikigai transcend career paths, occupations, and even reincarnations. Every situation presents a problem to solve. Each solution unfolds that meaning. Ultimately, it's not the person, but the life itself asking the question all must answer. And the way to respond is by actually being responsible, which logotherapy calls the essence of human existence. This unique meaning can be found in three different ways: creating work or doing a deed, experiencing or encountering something or someone, your attitude toward unavoidable suffering. While the first is basically different accomplishments, the second can be experiencing goodness, truth, and beauty in culture, art, nature, etc., or by actually loving someone. Logotherapy acknowledges genuinely loving a person as the only way to really know them. By doing so, you actually see their full potential, which is yet to be actualized. You also help that person realize it by making them aware of what can be done. Supreme meaning. Frankl recognizes the existence of a dimension beyond rational comprehension and finite capabilities, one holding the ultimate meaning of existence and suffering. As covered, logos is deeper than logic. The key to grasping its meaning isn't enduring the meaninglessness of life, it is learning to bear with its unconditional meaningfulness rationally. Let me know if you agree. Second life. Live as if you are living already for the second time and as if you had acted the first time as wrongly as you're about to act now. Being logotherapy's categorical imperative, this encourages us to take ownership. It implies perceiving the present as the past, increasing awareness of life's limitations, and being mindful of the finality of what we make out of it. It basically fosters us to determine for what and to whom we are actually responsible while revealing all potential meanings. Transitoriness. Logotherapy views all potentialities as transitory, existing only for a limited time. The good news is that by actualizing them, we turn them into realities stored in the past, where they become eternalized and basically preserved. In the past, Frankl explains, nothing is irretrievably lost and everything is irrevocably stored. This encourages making responsible choices and prioritizing which potentiality to actualize first, which next, and which to rather sacrifice. Also, to remove the non-essential from the essential, following Marcus Aurelius' advice. Quote, "Man constantly makes his choice concerning the mass of his present potentialities, which of these will be condemned to non-being and which will be actualized. Which choice will be made an actuality once and forever, an immortal footprint in the sands of time. At any moment, man must decide for better or for worse what will be the monument of his existence." Unquote. Those living mindlessly or recklessly get depressed seeing another day gone. Those living responsibly make mindful choices. They look back on a collection of realities, experiences, love, accomplishments, victories, and overcome obstacles. They have nothing to worry about as their collection only grows with each day, eternally preserved in the solidified past. They are not jealous of the youth having more time and potential, as they know they've been making the most out of theirs. And such a person thinks to themselves, instead of possibilities, I have realities in my past, not only the reality of work done and love loved, but of sufferings bravely suffered. These sufferings are even the things of which I am most proud, though these are things which cannot inspire envy. Unquote. And as Frankl also says, having been is the surest way of being. Suffering. Like Stoicism, logotherapy empowers us to change regardless of circumstances, moving from victimhood to victory. We must never forget that we may also find meaning in life even when confronted with a hopeless situation, when facing a fate that cannot be changed. For what then matters is to bear witness to the unique human potential at its best, which is to transform a personal tragedy into triumph, to turn one's predicament into a human achievement. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Unquote. Apparently, this doesn't help us avoid pain or feel pleasure, but actually find meaning. When it is for a meaningful cause, people can endure suffering and pleasure deprivation. However, suffering is by no means essential to meaning. It is just that meaning is always possible, even when suffering is unavoidable. If it isn't, the meaningful thing would be to remove the suffering first. And as Frankl says, to suffer unnecessarily is masochistic rather than heroic. Now, we may be removed from what we love, but the possibility of undergoing some suffering is pretty much inescapable. Either way, logotherapy encourages us to not lose hope, but to seek the meaning that was and always will be there. When in the camps, Franco recognized that for most prisoners, the question was, will I survive? For him it was, does all this unreal suffering have meaning? Part of the circumstances, including getting his hands on paper, this mobilized the author to rewrite the confiscated manuscript and basically live. It was a challenge to live, which he embraced fully. Self-actualization. Logotherapy views self-transcendence as the foundation of self-actualization. The reason is that human beings are always directed towards something external, whether a meaningful goal, purpose, or another human being. The more we dedicate or give ourselves to that thing or a person, the more we self-transcend and self-actualize. Personal experience. If you think about it, this is pretty damn accurate. At some point, the purpose might be quitting addictions and mastering something meaningful to you. At another, getting jacked and improving your health. Then, learning to content create or code, actually keeping a meaningful relationship after decades of meaningless sex, and perhaps building a business. What you'll find is that living like that makes self-actualization kinda inevitable, even without self-help. Nevertheless, logotherapy massively influenced some of the biggest in the genre, from Tony Robbins to Mark Manson to Andrew Huberman and many more like the mentioned Ikigai scholars. And that is not just my opinion, but an actual fact. So you know what to do, and thank you for your time.